trying to act as if only white men are the ones that are capable. Because right now you're sitting at a table with 3 very capable black women.
Now, we gotta touch on another interesting aspect of this disturbing and really concerning news cycle about the fires in LA, which is what role, if any, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts that kind of prioritize identity and set quotas and want to promote, the whole rainbow of identities being represented in a profession, what role that may or may not have played in Los Angeles's fire department and government and other things that may have hampered the response to these tragedies. That's the accusation some people are making, and a pretty fiery debate broke out live on CNN between conservative commentator Scott Jennings and Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Take a listen.
You might have recall a news story from last year. There was some interest in the fire departments and the firefighters in California, and the interest was that there were too many white men who were firefighters, and we need to have a program in California to make sure we don't have enough white men as firefighters.
So before we get into the debate that ensued, just so you know what he's talking about, here's an NPR headline from 2023. Firefighting is mostly white and male. A California program aims to change that. They report that California did adopt initiatives to specifically try to focus on making its firefighting ranks more diverse, more females, more people of color, less white men. This is not an imaginary thing. It was widely reported. So that's kind of the context you should know before the argument you're about to hear.
If your house was burning down, how much do you care what color the firefighters
you
are?
can respond and then we'll...
Listen, I am so tired. You know what? There was an article that just came out that said that actually the most educated demographic in this country right now is black women. So let me be clear. Because you are a woman, or because I know that some of the right has been sharing these photos of the fact that I believe that the fire chief may be a woman or something, that has nothing to do with it. We are looking at qualifications. What diversity, equity, and inclusion has always been about is saying, you know what? Open this up. Don't just look at the white men. Open it up and recognize that other people can be qualified. And the fact that we want to, at a time when people are dying, decide that a country of immigrants is failing or people are dying because the same very people that built this country, because the last time I checked, y'all didn't say that anything was wrong with the White House. And I can promise you it was my ancestors that built the White House. So listen, if we have been good enough to build this country, we are good enough to serve and die overseas, we are good enough to serve in other ways. And the fact that people actually decide that they want to engage in public service, whether it's sitting in Congress or whether it's serving on the fire department or the police department, should not be an issue. The fact is, stop trying to act as if only white men are the ones that are capable. Because right now you're sitting at a table with 3 very capable black women.
Yeah, it might actually be 2. There's so much here that's absolutely unhinged. My personal favorite is when she compares her public service of being a professional yapper, which is what most members of Congress are. They do very little if they're not in leadership, and they just go on TV and yap, which, no shade, basically what I do on YouTube. But she compared herself to firefighters heroically, like trying to save people, and what, babe, chill out with that. That's a little delulu and kind of offensive, actually. And she doesn't seem to understand what DEI is or why people have a problem with it. Nobody, at least, I mean, there are some racist people out there, but nobody serious, certainly not Scott Jennings or people like myself who are critiquing the DEI movement, believes that only white men are capable. Also, side note, like, what is this weird racist thing where she wants to take credit for what her ancestors did and throw shade at other people from their I thought we moved on from that. It's actually bad to try to gatekeep or reward or shut down people based on ancestry. You deserve no credit nor condemnation for what your ancestors did, nor do I. Who cares? That's irrelevant. She's trying to respond to a straw man argument of Republicans think only white men are qualified by saying, no, actually, only POC women are qualified and white men are trash. That's how she comes off here. Am I missing something? Am I going crazy? I agree with her point that a woman could be a very good fire chief. I think that's entirely possible. But I will also say this, firefighting as a profession is naturally going to be majority male. the physical demanding nature of the work, the kind of just a lot of things. I think even if you have what you should have, which is no sort of identity quotas, oh, we've got to have less men in our departments, that's insane, but just have equal opportunity. These are the standards. Anyone of any race, any gender who can meet the standards without us lowering them is welcome here. You could have a female who rises through the ranks and becomes a fire chief who's hyper competent. Now, is it fair to question that when they're so openly prioritizing diversity and talking about want to get less white men? Yes, it is fair to question that, absolutely. But it's also wrong for us to assume any individual is unqualified just because it's a woman. Like, no, maybe she's qualified. We shouldn't assume that either way, but it's fair to critique this overemphasis on identity and representation at the expense of a field when it comes to life-saving things like firefighting, just merit. Like just the best, okay? Equal opportunity, but don't lower the standards. Don't worry about how you frickin' diverse a rainbow you have on your brochure. We got to save people's lives here. Like that should not be relevant whatsoever. And I think it's fair to point that out without somebody crashing out on you on camera and losing it and going on an unhinged rant about white people and their ancestors. Like she is a lot. And it's worth understanding that Scott is right that the LA Fire Department specifically has prioritized DEI. Take a listen to some local news coverage.
Los Angeles Fire Department is launching its first ever Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Bureau. It is dedicated to ensuring a fair and equal workplace environment.
Eyewitness News reporter Christian Cordero is live in North Hollywood with more on what it entails and why it's necessary. Christian?
Ellen, Colleen, the discrepancies are stark, even just on paper. The LAFD this year hired its first ever female chief, and it says so far this year, 8% of its applicants have been women. That might sound like a small number, but it's actually twice the percentage of female firefighters currently in the department. Every day, the LAFD is called upon to respond to crises, and today it is taking a step to resolve one of its own. The department's first ever Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Bureau will launch in January, 1 year since its first ever female fire chief, Kristen Crowley, was appointed.
So by creating this new bureau, our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Bureau, now we actually have the staff to do the work when it comes to doing a deep dive in regard to how we do business, how we take care of one another in the fire stations and in our work environment.
The plan is to do so by adding training and enforcing accountability. Calls for accountability have echoed for years. In 2021, women's advocacy groups, including one representing female firefighters, pushed for changes at the highest level, saying a system within the department exposes them to abuse, bullying, and a culture of intimidation and retaliation.
So the LA Fire Department has a whole DEI program. They've made a huge emphasis of this. Republicans or conservatives are not imagining this or making this up. It's not a boogeyman. But where a lot of right-wingers are losing me is an attempt to essentially blame what's happening now on that, at least in part. And I think that kind of jumps the gun. It can simultaneously be true that things like firefighting should not be about identity politics, right? It should be equal and fair and open. And for example, women firefighters shouldn't be ever subject to harassment or anything like that. But high standards that apply to everyone, equal opportunity, but you know what? Not all the outcomes are going to be equal. More men might meet the requirements and be interested in the field, and that's okay. That's actually how meritocracy works. It's not about cookie cutter equal representation and outcomes. No, that's the woke equity approach. No, it's about equality of opportunity, high standards, meritocracy in everything, honestly, but especially in matters of life and death, okay? But we cannot actually draw some sort of through line between blaming DEI at these departments for what's happening now. That's just, there's not evidence substantiating that. The math there does not compute. It has a lot more to do with really complicated questions of policies about wildfire management, forest management, all sorts of really complicated environmental policy issues that have been a problem for a long time in California and are getting worse. It is a vast oversimplification to try to blame it on wokeness, and we don't even know enough about how the fire department has responded yet to say they're doing a bad job. And then if they are doing a bad job, proving that it's because of DEI is also something you have to actually prove. You can't just show they do DEI, bad things are happening, ergo DEI is causing bad things. That is a hyper simplistic approach that actually kind of reminds me to the one that some woke types will take, where they say a problem exists. There is some racism in this institution. Racism is the cause of this problem. Not everything is caused by your pet issue that you are upset about or worked up about, whether it's DEI, whether it's microaggressions or racism. And I don't really think that in the aftermath of such tragedies is the right time to try to make those dunks. We should have a conversation about why DEI should be excised from American life and meritocracy should be the reigning principle of the day, but we shouldn't jump to, assuming that women in positions of power are just there because they're women in DEI, just because we see them. We shouldn't just see a black person and start yelling, DEI hire, like that. That is a vast overreaction. The pendulum is swinging too far into the opposite extreme with a lot of the online right on this discourse. And I think the conversation is just losing the nuance and also the care of taking, hold on, let's wait and see, okay? Get some more facts. We don't need to blame and attack people always in the aftermath of tragedies, but that's what so many people seem to do. That's my take on some of the controversies relating to this disaster down in LA. Let me know what you guys think. I want to hear your feedback. If you're being affected and there's some way I can help, please do let me know. Do hit that like button while you're at it and make sure subscribed if you aren't yet. I know some of you watch regularly but haven't subscribed to the channel yet. And thank you for watching, but also side eye to you for not subscribing and helping me out, but still love you, but you could really do that.